We are inside of a month to go before the first Alabama football game of the season. So before we break down some of the position battles to watch in fall camp this year, get your predictions in for the Alabama record this season in the comments section right now. Now, today's show, we are looking at the non-quarterback position battles worth watching because we've spent a lot of time on the QB spot, and I know we will spend even more time into the future. Breaking down the offensive line, 2 spots there, defensive backs, a couple different spots, and the tight end room. We're going to begin on offense with the offensive line. 3 spots I think are pretty clearly locked in. It's Seth McLaughlin at center, Tyler Booker, prime for a breakout year at right tackle, potential future first-round pick J.C. Latham over there on the right side. Let's begin with the left tackle position, where Elijah Pritchett is the returner in the sense that he played a little bit, and I do emphasize a little bit last year. He was the number 4 offensive tackle recruit in 2022, and in most years, I think there'd be plenty of excitement about Pritchett potentially taking over as the left tackle for this Crimson Tide team. 2 reasons why maybe there's some concern. A, very small sample size, tough to really glean that much out of it. Maybe didn't have the best stuff, and more importantly, hasn't always looked dominant or even that great in various, visible practices, the A-Day spring game, etc. A little bit nicked up as well on Fan Day last week. So you can't base too much on the sample size last year for the redshirt freshman. But the other reason why there's so much excitement about the other guy at left tackle is that 5-star offensive tackle Kaydn Proctor is a member of the Crimson Tide right now. Massive size out of Des Moines, Iowa. The number 1 offensive tackle recruit in the class of 2023. The Crimson Tide went into Iowa and quite simply stole him from the Hawkeyes and poached him away to get him a member of this Crimson Tide team. It's a matter of when, not if, we see Kaydn Proctor take over as a starting tackle for this team. But the when comes down to, is it week 1? Is it later this season? Is it next year off into the future? Proctor has had a lot of hype around him, one of several true freshmen who could play pretty big roles for the Crimson Tide, which doesn't always happen. He's a 5-star, the number 9 overall player, and as mentioned, the number 1 offensive tackle in his recruiting class in 2023. So prediction time. Who starts at left tackle? EP for Elijah Pritchett or KP for Kaydn Proctor? This will be the pinned comment on today's show. So if the ad comes here on YouTube, that's fine. Ignore the ad. Nobody cares. Instead, go vote. Go predict. EP or KP. Let's stick on that left side of the line, the uncertainty going on at the left guard position, where it seems Terrence Ferguson II has potentially emerged as the favorite over Darrin Dalcourt at the position. Ferguson did not play much last year, 53 snaps again, not a lot to really go off of there, but he was repping with the ones at Fan Day, and he's had some reps in the past at center. There are not very many photos of Terrence Ferguson, as it all turns out, because he played 53 snaps last year. But Ferguson seems to be gaining some traction there over the veteran Darrian Dalcourt, who at minimum could be a decent backup for you at center or at guard. Dalcourt played his snaps at center last season despite having a guard build, although center builds aren't that different, and was a guard recruit back in 2019. Now, Dalcourt last year at center had a bigger sample size, a bit more of a thing we can judge off of when, we mentioned Ferguson had 53 snaps, Pritchett had 13, and we're Xing that out by 4 or 5 for Dalcourt's numbers alone, nearly 300. Pretty steady grades there across the board, not necessarily, the highest graded player, but enough that you could feel comfortable with him out there. But if you can get better play out of the younger guy the coaches seem to be pretty high on in Terrence Ferguson, I view that as an absolute win for the Crimson Tide. Now look, Dalcourt has the experience. The offense is adjusting a little bit under Tommy Rees. The goal will be who can be the most consistent. Having those great plays is awesome. The pancakes, whatever, great, delicious. But if you're not being consistent and you're getting beat a lot, that's not going to sit well for an offense. It's probably going to be a bit more ground focused and more clock controlling than maybe it's what it's been in previous years. So who starts at left guard? 2 options then. TF for Terrence Ferguson, or DD for Darrian Dalcourt. You guys can go vote where else but the comment section, TF or DD. Over to the secondary now. You've got some obvious players locked and loaded. Kool-Aid McKinstry not going anywhere. He is certainly going to be CB1. Terrion Arnold versus Trey Amos to a certain extent is a battle. Caleb Downs, I feel pretty confident, is going to start. Safety's also kind of up in the air where, Christian Story, Jake Pope had good A days. Devonta Smith is getting reps with the one. And it's also, you have to figure out, Malachi Moore is probably going to start. But where does he start? Would seem to be that star position, kind of that nickel safety hybrid player is the lead advantage there for Malachi Moore, although maybe I would wonder if he'd be better at safety. Some inconsistencies in his time with Alabama. The numbers are fairly intriguing, though. 91 tackles. His completion rate per PFF allowed is 67.2. 4 interceptions, 12 pass breakups. I like Malachi Moore. He's also struggled at times with consistency. The Crimson Tide are losing multiple good safeties. Brian Branch was so good for Alabama last year. Jordan Battle was a very good player as well. I think Branch was, I put him just behind Will Anderson in terms of best defensive players in that draft even, not just from Alabama. He had more, by the way, at issues against Texas and Tennessee, and that star position is very, very important. The Crimson Tide could always try out Earl Little if they needed to. He had a pretty good A-Day, had some good buzz coming around him out of spring. You could give Jaylen Key a shot there, who we will spend some more time on here in a little bit. But first, we are 202 subscribers away from 9,000. We are close. Let's get there. Free Alabama football videos all throughout the season and regular season, the games, etc., the postseason, the playoffs that are going to come, I'm sure, for the Crimson Tide. Hit that sub button if you haven't already. YouTube.com/@RollTideTV. Jaylen Key, then, is an interesting player who I think does fit that star mold pretty well and also offers some different positional flexibility of being able to play a more typical safety role as well. Here's what Nick Saban has said on Jaylen Key. Quote, "We needed a couple of versatile guys in the secondary. Jaylen is learning the system, but he is an instinctive player. He does have good size. I think he can play in the deep part of the field. I think he can play in the box. He's learning, but he has a great attitude. He is smart. I think the experience he has will help him develop. I think he's going to be a guy that can help us and contribute. I am not exactly sure what role yet because we are moving a lot of guys around in different positions, but we are trying to find the best 5 guys to play the best spots on the back end." So that depth chart we showed you earlier, it might change a little bit depending on what else happens over the course of fall camp. Jaylen Key last year for UAB before he leveled up to come to the Crimson Tide, 60 tackles, 4.5 TFLs, 3 interceptions, a pass breakup mixed in there as well, 2 forced fumbles. There's a lot to like about Jaylen Key with that flexibility. It's a matter of, does he take over at star? Is he your first super sub in the secondary? Is he a starter at safety? Remains up in the air. Of the 2 seemingly top options, Earl Little maybe also in that conversation too, who takes over at the star position? MM for Malachi Moore, JK for Jaylen Key. Back to tight ends now, back to offense as we discussed tight ends. A lot of change has gone on here with this group since the season ended. CJ Dippre comes in from Maryland. Danny Lewis had a really impressive A-Day, kind of surprised people because Robbie Oots was banged up there. Amari Niblack has drawn plenty of buzz. Those 4 could consistently rotate and share the field, especially early on this season. Now, the Maryland transfer Dippre is the safe bet to be the starter and be the best of the options from a blocking and pass-catching perspective, being able to do it all. Nick Saban's made some comments on Dippre, by the way, saying the tight end group has really made good progress. CJ has been a really good addition to that group. He's got maturity. He's got experience. He's got size. He's got good hands. He's pretty good in the passing game. He's a pretty decent blocker. He's that well-rounded player. I don't think it's an accident that the Crimson Tide went out and got him. When Bama adds a transfer, you expect those guys to play. Alabama might have had some misses in the recruiting cycle the past couple of years to cause some transfers being needed. But Dippre is certainly, Dippre is the favorite to play there. But there is the dark horse candidate. And I'll give producer Chris the credit or the blame here, who, of course, is an Alabama alumnus. He is a massive fan, is that a fair way to describe it, of Amari Niblack. His hot take for you guys here is that after Niblack caught one touchdown pass in 2022, the over-under is 6.5 touchdown catches in 2023. That's kind of crazy to me. I think you've gone too far in the other direction. I'm taking the under, but Nick Saban has also mentioned Niblack. Says Amari has made a lot of improvement. He's kind of a mismatch player a little bit in the passing game, which is a good thing. All the other guys are progressing nicely as well. The group has come a long way, I think, over the spring and summer. Now that mentions Danny Lewis and Robbie Oots, who I think will play. Maybe I'll meet you halfway, Chris, and we can put Niblack as the third tight end spot into the future over Oots, but behind Lewis and Dippre. I would not be surprised if there are multiple tight end sets. Tommy Rees ran a lot of those at Notre Dame, and all of these guys, Niblack still has work to grow as a blocker, can block, they can catch passes, and that does bring some value as many offenses spread you out. There is some value in zagging while others zig in terms of being able to go a bit heavier at that grouping there. We will keep you guys covered on all the latest around fall camp, so if you haven't already, hit that sub button right now, youtube.com/@RollTideTV.